Are you still dating the devil you know? The devil you know is the same person that you've been attracted to all along that is just not good for you. All your relationships that didn't work out, you are the one common denominator. So at the very least, you need to change the kind of person that you're picking to be in a partnership with. Welcome to my Broken to Brave podcast. I'm Donna Barnes. The devil you know is an expression that I've used for a really long time and talks about that same person that you're wildly attracted to that isn't good for you and the relationship doesn't work out. It's the definition of insanity to keep trying the same thing and expecting a different result, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes is kind of my favorite expression because it's just so true, right? It's boiling down the definition of insanity. And we tend to date the devil we know based on the dysfunction of our childhood. Let's face it, even if we had amazing parents, we still had hurt issues around something. There was something that was not what we wanted it to be and that we have unresolved issues about, or whatever it is. It does come from your childhood. There's pattern identifying exercises you can do where you really make a list of all the people that you've ever dated and their personality traits. They're good and bad. They're controlling, if they're loving, if they, whatever. And then you do the same thing with your caretakers from your childhood, your parents, if you had an older sibling or aunt or grandparent, whoever was primary caretakers, do the exact same thing. List their personality traits and then circle the common traits that you're seeing. And it's usually the parent or caretaker that you had the most conflicted relationship with that you keep picking subconsciously in romantic partners, because subconsciously you're trying to heal those issues or resolve those issues or remove those issues that you couldn't do with the parent or caretaker. Unfortunately, most people really don't want to work that hard. When you get into a relationship with somebody, unfortunately, the reason most relationships fail is because your issues start coming up to the surface. So I've long said it's about finding someone whose issues don't clash with your issues. That's how you can make a relationship last. Really doing some work around. And that exercise that I just mentioned, I think is a very common one that therapists use as well to really help you isolate. And personally for me, I loved my mother, but we were a little bit oil and water. We fought a lot. A couple of early boyfriends I fought a lot with, right? And it took me to then, once I had a fabulous therapist, to really start looking that I was dating my mother in so many ways. And my mother and I were a little bit like oil and water. But then honestly, my father, and it was really one of the most wonderful men I've ever met in my entire life. I miss him dearly. I lost him in 2000. By doing the exercise, now really date men that are closer to who my father was, who, as I just said, was an amazing man. And then that's really what I mostly want in a partner. Character is the biggest piece of who someone is, especially if you meet people on a dating app. If they lie about something to get you to meet them, that's a massive red flag. I don't care if it's a minute little thing. They lie about their age. They lie about their height. They lie about their weight. They have old pictures. There's all sorts of things people do to be deceptive on a dating app. If someone shows you that they're lacking character, that's a piece of who they are. That's a massive red flag if you're trying to change the pattern of the kind of people you date. It's really helpful if you've come out of a somewhat toxic relationship to make a list of the things that you don't want in your next relationship, because honestly, knowing what you don't want is really more important than what you do want. Most people don't know what they don't want until they've had it and didn't like it in a relationship. And there's no better way to really vividly know what you don't want if you've had it. And if you're watching this, it's probably because you've had toxic relationships, which is the devil you know, because you probably came from somewhat of a toxic childhood. In trying to change that, you really need to, and look, here's the whole thing about trying to date healthier people. You probably won't have that I can't keep my hands off of you wild, insane attraction that you do with the toxic devils, right? That you know, because you're trying to change what you're picking and what you're interested in. And honestly, it just, everything's going to feel different. However, if you can intellectually recognize that somebody is a really good choice for you and they are an attractive person and you like them and you enjoy their company, but you're not insanely attracted to them, I encourage you to hang in there with that person, because they probably will end up being the best relationship you ever had and absolutely the love of your life. And I know that for me, because the first guy that the guy that I say openly I should have married, I left him only because I thought it was the kick in the ass that he needed to say, let's get married. He struggled to make decisions, right? I don't recommend that, by the way. I do not recommend that. I ran into that guy years later and he flat out said to me, I'm so sorry I didn't make the right decision, right? And I actually burst into tears, right? As I said, I should have married that guy. My point is when I first met him, I could intellectually recognize that he was a really good choice for me. And I was attracted to him, and I really enjoyed his company, and I liked him very much. But it wasn't like I was jumping up and down and telling all my girlfriends, oh my God, I met an amazing guy, right? But I stayed with it. And interestingly, just as a dating coach, it was a good experiment for me. And that's kind of why I'm sharing it with you, because this was in New York. I was driving home to Philadelphia, which is where my family is, for my birthday. And I spent some time with my family and things like that. And then I was driving back to New York and I was thinking to myself, I miss him. Yeah, I miss him. And it was validating for me. I thought, wow, yeah, see, I do really care about him. I miss him. And I'm sharing that because I think that's true for everybody. When you start dating somebody that is not exactly what you've always dated, but it might be really good for you, it's going to feel a little different in the beginning. It's not going to be as over the moon exciting, but that's how true love actually grows. And I mean, look, years ago, there were arranged marriages. There still are in certain cultures. And people genuinely fall in love with each other anyway, because there's a great affinity there. And the more you spend time with somebody, the more they grow on you anyway. And just in my own life, I see people that are still together that when they first got together, I didn't think they were a good couple. But here it is decades later, and they're still together. So you never know, right? Is I guess what I'm saying. And if you find somebody that you like and you're attracted to, but you're not like having those crazy heart palpitations and you're not jumping over hoops to do whatever you can to get to see that person, that's actually a good thing. Because what things that start fast usually end fast, right? They crash and burn. So in trying to pick better partners, it's going to feel different. And it really is. And I'm really encouraging you to hang in there with somebody that is perfect for you on paper and that is good company and you are attracted to, but you just don't have those butterflies. Stick with that. That is why you can, first of all, make better choices, right? When you're in that euphoria of connecting with somebody, you're throwing all caution to the wind. You're not heeding red flags and you're just blowing forward because you've tremendous chemistry with this person. But tremendous chemistry usually doesn't turn into a really fabulous relationship because there's so much more that goes into a relationship besides just that fabulous chemistry. And yes, I know you need to have that chemistry. I mean, I personally need to have that chemistry, but I'm also very aware that it doesn't always come like immediately. Sometimes it has to grow. And honestly, two of the greatest loves of my life, I wasn't that attracted to when I first met, but I enjoyed their company and I had a great time with them and I stayed with it. And yeah, the chemistry increased and became better. And I think that's true too, right? I mean, years ago, Sharon Stone got married for the first time and she said, married sex is so much better, right? And everybody kind of laughed at her. But I think there's some truth in that. When you get close to somebody emotionally and you really have that commonality and shared lifestyle and security, really good relationship is a safe place to land. And someone that has your back and someone just is comforting. And it's the first person you want to talk to about anything that happens in your life, good or bad. But if you're in a toxic-ish relationship, I mean, and let's define toxic, because toxic doesn't have to mean someone's hitting you or physically abusing you in any way whatsoever. Largely, it's because there's some sort of addict. There's a whole host of reasons why things can be toxic. And the smallest way that most people don't realize is if you just argue a lot. No one's hitting anybody, no one's breaking anything, but you just are a little bit like oil and water, right? You argue about the stupidest things just because that's the way you communicate with each other. That's a toxic relationship. And it is not normal. I mean, geez, years ago, I had a girl come to me for coaching and she said, how often is it normal to fight? And I said, why? How often do you fight? And she said, pretty much daily. There's really no norm on what you should date. But honestly, in a really good relationship, you should only fight when there's something about the relationship that needs attention. And the only winner of an argument should be your relationship, in that you found a better way to exist together. And that's the real benefit of a fight. If you have a fight because something really wasn't working, and then you had a little bit of different feelings about it, and then you talked it out or fought it out, and hopefully you didn't fight nasty. Like, you can never unsay something, and be really careful what you say in the heat of anger, because you can't take it back and your partner will never forget it. Trying to improve your relationship is the only benefit of having an argument. So if you're in a relationship where you're having arguments constantly over stupid little things, get out. That is not a good relationship, and it is not healthy to have those kind of arguments. Quite frankly, in stores, you hear how people talk to each other. Sometimes, couples, it really bothers me. It really bothers me when I hear somebody just down talking to somebody, or snapping at them, or just being rude and just not being compassionate and really loving. Kill them with kindness. I don't care how long you've been together, the way you talk to each other needs to be civil and loving. And actually, that's the mark of a really good relationship, is two people who have tremendous respect for each other and a great affinity for each other, and really just enjoy being in each other's company. That's a healthy relationship. And if that's not what you've been dating, then that most definitely is the devil you know. And you need to start looking for a healthier relationship, which will feel differently in the beginning. When you meet somebody who's really good for you, you're drawn to them, but you don't have that over the moon excitement, stay with it. Because I can almost promise you that's going to be a great relationship if you do stick with it. It's going to feel different when you start dating a different kind of person. I highly encourage that you do. And really start looking at the devil you know if you've had a string of relationships that just don't work out. We all date the devil we know by natural process. It's what we're attracted to. Our parents are the paradigm of our relationships. So whatever we grew up in is what we're looking for to date in partners. But that's the devil that you know. So I highly encourage you to look for someone else, to look for a different kind of person who isn't going to stimulate all those childhood wounds. And honestly, you really need to talk to somebody to heal those childhood wounds. I am available for coaching. I'm actually very good at helping people move forward from things. At the very least, find some good books to read. I'd also be happy to recommend some excellent books. Actually, to that point, if you've had any kind of really trauma in your background, The Betrayal Bond is one of the best books that I've ever read. I'll put a link to it in the description below. I highly recommend it if you've had any kind of toxic betrayals from caretakers, teachers, sports coach, like whoever in your life that you've had some sort of a relative is usually who is an abuser, right? So look for healthier people in who you're looking to date, and stop picking the devil you know. So I hope you'll like my video and send me your comments. I'm here for coaching if you need coaching. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next episode.